This episode of Beauty and the Surgeon podcast is brought to you by Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an online company dedicated to making professional health testing easy and accessible. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, completely confidential at-home health tests from a range of tests from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19. Listeners of our podcast who are new to Let's Get Checked get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com, trylgc.com/beauty, BEAUTY, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20, BEAUTY20 at checkout. Do it. Getting tested is important. It's the responsible thing to do, and you know how important I think it is to make sure you understand your labs. Welcome, everyone, to Beauty and the Surgeon podcast. I'm Amy. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm joined today, as always, by Dr. Jason Martin.
Yep.
He's a board-certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon. Yep. Dr. Martin.
That's true.
How you doing?
I'm doing really good. How about you, Amy? How are you doing?
True. I'm doing good.
Good.
I am super excited because we actually have one of our favorite types of episodes, which is questions from you, the listener or the watcher. I actually did that when I sent it to Sarah. I put questions
listener,
from
watcher.
Yeah, yep. Because some of you do watch us. If you're listening and you want to watch us, you can find us on YouTube.
So I had a young person come in and they said, "Oh, I saw you on YouTube, right?"
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
at Jason Martin MD.
Yeah, but
YouTube.
I don't listen to podcasts. And I found that very interesting. I would assume that the younger people listen to podcasts over the older people, but actually I feel like a lot of older people do listen to podcasts. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to kind of like preferences that people utilize.
Yeah. So if you are a watcher, listener, and you've ever sent us a question, you may hear yourself. You can leave us a voicemail, and that's where these voicemails are coming from.
Yeah. And Amy is shameless the way she promotes her voicemail. I personally have standards. She begs for voicemails. Yes. She begs for them. So
if you would like to leave us a voicemail and hear yourself on the next questions from listeners, you can call us at 303-630, and I'm sure it's down here because Nils is awesome, 9038. You can also text. Please call me.
Oh, it's embarrassing.
Call me maybe.
Oh, gosh.
So let's
Carly Rae Jepsen.
I think it's Jepsen. What was that from, like 1990?
Yeah, if you have like a daughter who's like a teenager, you know that song.
Oh, well, that daughter is probably in her 20s because I'm guessing that song came out almost 20 years ago.
Oh, I don't think so. You keep going.
It was early 2000s.
Nils?
Aspen.
No. I think it's 06.
It's called Call Me Maybe.
Call Me Maybe. I think it's 06.
I would say 06 or 07.
Yeah,
maybe
and I feel like she was like became popular on the internet before
and she was like 12.
Yeah.
Was the internet even a thing in 2007?
Yeah, it's like on YouTube. I think it's 07,
Back in
08.
the days of dial-up?
Yeah.
Yep. Call Me Maybe.
2012?
2012?
Yeah, only 10 years ago.
How is that possible?
Yeah,
what is time?
Legally Blonde when I hear that song. They're like,
Call Me Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, all right. Well, so call me maybe. The first thing we have to do. So for some time now, Dr. Martin has, and I have as well, we have mentioned a number of times in our podcast that we have a listener named Dave, who Dr. Martin thinks is a medical school student. And I was wondering if Dave was going to listen to our podcast where we talk about him a lot, which was recently.
In between his medical school classes.
Yeah. Dr. Martin thinks that he is low-key trying to get answers to his board questions in medical school. But Dave,
there's something with that dude. Okay?
Dave actually wrote us, and Dave said, so this is a special shout out to Dave.
Oh, Dave actually called?
Dave left us a message.
Okay.
So he sent this to us on YouTube, and it said, I'm a proud graduate of the esteemed YouTube School of Medicine, and he signed it Dave MD YS.
I love it.
So AKA
he's a YouTube doctor.
A medical student. So
hey, I'd go to Dave. Like, I have a hard time with doctors. I'd go to Dave.
Right. I mean, he's paying attention.
Do you think he's ranked on Yelp? I mean, where's his office? Let's go over there and see him.
YSMO, I think, is maybe my favorite acronym ever now. So that stands for the YouTube School of Medicine. Like, man.
Yeah.
So welcome, Dave.
Welcome, Dave.
And also, Dave, if you send me an email, I'm Amy, AMY, at Jason Martin MD. I will send you a Beauty and Surgeon card.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, Dave, I've used your name like every episode. Yeah. I lay awake at night thinking about you in medical school and how you're doing. Now that I know that you went to the University of YouTube
School of Medicine.
Yeah. I wonder what his subspecialty is. Do we know? Maybe just leaving comments
Not
on videos?
A medical student. Not being a medical student. That's my specialty.
Oh, yeah.
Not being a medical student. Yeah. So, Dave, if you would like a Beauty and the Surgeon cup, just send me an email and I would be happy to send you.
You got to rep that out, buddy.
Yeah.
And you got to send us back a picture.
Yeah. If
you don't have
the beauty surgery cup. Yeah.
Cup. Okay.
Yeah. So Dave, thank you for being our number one not medical student listener. Now that we have solved the mystery of whether or not Dave is a medical student,
I don't know.
once
I'm
and for
about
all.
95% convinced.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So our first question is actually.
Wouldn't it be funny if Dave's actually like the chairman of a plastic surgery department? Like this is what he does on the weekends.
Listens to our podcast.
I'm going to nail that son of a bitch, Martin.
Right. Like I am totally changing up the questions for next year's exam. So our first question is actually a voicemail.
All right. Nice.
Let's listen.
Hi, Amy. My name is Faith. Thank you so much for the excellent work you do on your podcast. You and Dr. Martin are phenomenal. I am a resident of North Carolina, strongly considering surgery, liposuction. I would actually need a removal of skin as well as the suction. My question is, when I looked at some of the pictures in the gallery, I did not see women of color. So what is your experience with different skin types, color types, or women of color? Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Faith, for leaving us a voicemail.
Such an awesome
I should have used
question.
phenomenal when I introduced you. This is phenomenal, Dr. Jason Martin.
Yeah.
Board certified plastic surgeon.
By the way, this is such a good question, and I think it's actually can have a really good answer. But just real quick, Faith, if you live in North Carolina, then you're either a Duke or North Carolina fan.
Oh, this is key.
And I hate both teams. So
being from Kentucky,
Faith. So, but I do really much do like you a lot. So I'm going to look past any allegiances you have to the local teams. All right. So, I do think this is really important. Representation on the internet with before and after pictures, stock photos can be really hit or miss. You don't see a lot of people of color. And that's not, people, when I say of color, they say black or white. No, I mean people that of Asian descent, African, American Indian. And I think it's really important because if you fall within those umbrellas, it's really nice to see people that you can, number one, relate to, but also see how they're healing.
Scarring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Scarring's a big deal for people that in medicine, or what we do, we call it a Fitzpatrick classification. And you can look that up, which I do think it's funny that Fitzpatrick is an Irish name, so they have like no skin color probably.
You calling me a Fitz 1?
It's like evaluating skin color.
There is no Fitz 0. Starts at 1.
It's all messed up. But anyways, it goes, I think, 0 through 6. 6 would be like true, like African, and 0 would be Amy. Okay?
There is no 0. It's 1. I'm 1.
Whatever.
I'm 1.
So
I'm number 1.
It would be good for people of color, especially with a specific background, to be able to see pictures that they could relate to, and those are not well represented on the internet. We try hard for our practice to show that. Some of that is where we live. Some of that is just chance. I mean, if people want to allow their pictures to be shown, a lot of people, just FYI, are, at least here, we have a practice full of fairly normal people, are not great with putting their pictures on the internet. They're very happy with the results, but they're willing to let you show it to other people. And so when I have a lot more pictures of people with color actually in our practice that I show people of color, so they can see what the scars look like and see what the outcomes would be. And you alluded to that because you had excess skin.
And scarring is so key. We have a great episode where we talk about scarring, but one of the things that really does play into how you scar, specifically people of African American descent can have keloiding problems, and they typically know that when they come in. People who keloid, Asian, we've had several Asian patients who keloid very badly. Now, keloiding is not hypertrophic scarring, which we talk about the difference on our podcast about scarring. But if you keloid scar, you know it.
Yeah. And
that's important that your doctor has experience with that. I mean,
and how would you know the keloid scar? And this is good for you too, Faith. If you've been injured before and the scar really healed terribly.
Or even from ear piercing. People who keloid will keloid from ear piercing.
And that scar grew outside the boundary of your scar. That's by definition keloid. But some people don't keloid. Some people are just really bad hypertrophic scarring, which means that it stays within the boundary of the scar, but it's just raised and it looks bad.
Or is very dark.
Right. So if you take an Amy, she probably would not develop hypertrophic scarring. It's possible, but likely
I just don't have the melanin.
and just the kind of genetics and the skin type, whereas someone who is a Fitz 3 to 4, maybe this is you, Faith, or a friend of yours, darker skin, they're going to be more likely to develop hypertrophic scarring, and in worst cases, it can go from there. But I think for these kind of questions are really important, and I do agree with Faith. Actually, I don't think they're very well represented in the internet in general. So Amy,
that
actually
probably really depends on where your practice is located.
I don't know. I think so. I was looking through stock photos because I'm very sensitive to this topic, and even the stock photos just really doesn't have a lot of people of color that you would use on an aesthetic plastic surgery website. And I think that's a problem. I think that culturally speaking, we don't have to get into this, but in reality, what people look at as beautiful, I think is wrong. I think the uniqueness of people, their backgrounds, their heritage, their genetics, I love that. I love people that come in that are all mixed up. They have all these different things from their heritage inside them. You can see little parts of it in their bodies. I examine people almost like artistically, and I find it amazing. For what it's worth, if you look on our YouTube channel, Faith, we do have a lot more photos, but we did some representation of people with certain skin types, usually like a fits 3, 4, and 5. These are more 4 to 5s, where you can see how they're healing. And the one on your left, when you're looking at it, is of a tummy tuck, and that healed really well. And this is probably more what you're talking about with the excess skin. So it's going to be a tummy tuck.
The nice thing about a thigh lift, though, is that your scars are really hidden. So
Did she say a thigh lift?
I think so.
I thought.
I was just talking about her legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way.
I don't know. She has such a pleasant voice. I just got very relaxed.
Right. Excess skin, excess fat. Yeah. So, scarring is going to be individual somewhat to you, and that doesn't matter what color your skin starts at. Most people, by the time they're an adult, have some understanding of how they scar from injuries sustained through life. And that will, of course, impact how your surgical scars heal. But if you listen to our episode about scarring, we talk a lot more about the difference between like a traumatic injury scar versus a controlled scar, like a surgical scar.
Yeah.
Definitely gives you a better chance of having a good looking scar. Go to a good surgeon, a phenomenal surgeon like Dr. Martin. Your scars are going to look good. So thank you, Faith. Really appreciate your voicemail.
Yeah. Awesome question. Thank you.
Love voicemails. All right. So let's take a quick break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsor, Let's Get Checked, and we'll be back for more questions.
All righty.
Dr. Martin, I'm super excited to talk about our sponsor for this podcast, Let's Get Checked. If you've been a listener of our podcast, you know that we have never had a sponsor before, and that's because we're an educational podcast. We're not looking to monetize, and we also would never recommend something that we didn't believe in and or use ourselves.
So basically you're saying we're very choosy.
We're very choosy when we come to our testing, but Let's Get Checked really aligns with our values. We talk a lot about monitoring your blood values of certain things. We talked recently about vitamin D serum levels. We talk a lot about hormone levels, and it's hard for some people to get to a lab, or you're afraid of the blood draw, or just, you're concerned about confidentiality. Like you have a lot of concerns and you just don't do it. Let's Get Checked makes it super easy because it's completely confidential. You do it from your home. So there's really no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, and we did it recently. Both Amy and I did it. She looked at her women's health, basically her hormone levels, and I looked at mine on the men's health side with testosterone. It was very simple. You go online. Their online interface is really easy to use and good. We got the testing kit very quickly. And the test itself, actually doing the stick, you do a stick on the end of your finger, is not hard to do. It only took about 3 to 4 minutes. You put it back in a sealed envelope that's confidential, goes back to them. You get your results in 2 to 5 days. It's really that simple. And the best part is it's about empowerment, about you taking control and trying to do things that are positive for your health and life. And this is one way to do it, literally from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, so they offer a wide range of tests. So they do men's and women's hormone panels. They do a full panel of STD testing. They also are now offering a COVID-19 test at home. So there are a lot of other just basic blood levels that you can get tested as well. And one of the things that we always say is you can't track what you don't check. So you might not know what's normal for you in the future if you're not checking it now, especially as it relates to hormones. And men's health specifically, I feel like, is a little bit undertreated. I mean, sperm counts are dropping by a large percentage in men these days. Most men struggle at some point in their lifetime with low testosterone.
And those men do not know what the symptoms of low testosterone are. Depression, anxiety, sleep problems, osteopenia or loss of bone, loss of muscle, and something we treat all the time, gynecomastia or male breast growth. These are real problems that can be improved or treated with testosterone. And these men do not know their levels. It's so easy to get checked. And this is why we're so excited about the sponsor.
Yeah. And Let's Get Checked is a completely CLIA certified lab, the CLIA lab. So they're a well-established, completely safe lab to use. You do get contacted after, so you get your results. I got a text at 4:30 in the morning, which I loved, that my results were ready.
And we're both up at 4:30,
Yep,
so that was good.
Super excited. And you have access to not only a nurse, but also a physician. So a physician does review your results, and it gives you a little breakdown of like where you're sitting on those levels. Dr. Martin's had even comparisons of like where 2 of the levels should be in relation to each other, which is a really important thing to note.
Right.
Just being within the normal range is not always enough. So it really gave more information than that. You'd still want to, of course, reach out to your own doctor if you needed some additional assistance with these labs or you did see something that was concerning. We didn't, thankfully, so that was good.
Yeah. We were both good. This podcast is about empowerment. It's educational. In my private practice, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. We are all about empowerment, and this is one way to do it. So we're very excited about the sponsorship, and we're looking forward to using it for our patients moving forward.
Yeah. So as a listener of our podcast, if you're also a new time user to Let's Get Checked, which a lot of you probably are, we do have a 20% discount code. So you do need to go to our specific URL, and it is linked in the description box below, but it's going to be TryLGC. So TRYLGC, like Let's Get Checked.com/beauty, BEAUTY. And you'll need to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. Beauty again is BEAUTY 220. And you can pick a test, like any test you'd like, put in our code and get your test shipped to you. Getting tested is the right thing to do. It's lets you know where you're at and what's responsible.
All right. Well, let's get tested.
Let's get tested. Let's get checked.
Let's get checked.
All right, we're back.
That was a quick interlude.
Well, we had to have our shout out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had talked about YouTube School of Medicine for a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So the rest of our questions were actually written questions. So you guys are going to hear me read you some questions, starting with Jennifer L. She said, "Great episode as always. Could you give your opinion on non-FDA approved implants? I myself have Motiva and am happy with them. However, I wonder why they have no FDA approval. In Europe, Motiva and Polytech are 2 widely used brands."
Yeah.
I think the very first thing here, I'm going to start off by saying that sometimes the same thing is called something different in a foreign country.
Right.
So your implant may have a different name in another country, but it doesn't mean that it's not the exact same implant in the United States, just with a different name.
It's just rebranded.
Yep.
Sientra did that for a while. They were using under the name Sientra, but the implant was something else.
Yeah, well, even Allergan for a while had a product line that was exactly the same, but was called something else in Europe. It's very common with devices as well. Like lasers and other things might have a different name in a different country, but they're the exact same thing.
I don't think Motiva and Polytech fall into that umbrella. I don't have any experience with those two, but I mean, the reality of it is, I think it's a really good question. Number one, the FDA is very rigorous, and it's hard to get things approved here for good or for bad. So,
much harder than in some other countries.
Yeah. I mean, we saw during COVID that changed a little bit. They changed their rules to get some of these medications and vaccines and stuff, but that was like extraordinary.
Well, and those are things that are approved only for emergency use.
Right.
Once the emergency goes away, they'll no longer be approved.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Potentially.
Yeah. But
in theory.
But the reality of it is very hard to get things through the FDA, especially when it's an implanted device, because you obviously are living with that.
Costs a lot of money is what he's not saying.
A crap load of money.
It's not hard. It's also very expensive.
If you, Motiva it's not, but a family-owned company, right? And they're like, oh, we're doing so well in Europe. It's almost not worth their investment to come over to the FDA and to do all the trials and all the application stuff. And then they have to hire a consultant. It's millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's probably not worth the investment on that company.
Yeah.
So,
especially entering a market that has established brands.
On top of this, with breast implants, lately it's been like I feel like we're part of the royal family, like one scandal after another.
Well, France is probably a key example of that. Look what happened with that implant that was removed off the market there because it was filled with like motor oil. I mean, it was not even human safe.
Okay, I'm not saying the motor oil thing, but like in reality, anaplastic large cell lymphoma, capsular contracture,
breast implant illness, BII.
Breast implant illness. You just go down the list and it just more things keep coming out. So it's not like the FDA is like, oh yeah, why don't we just throw on some more implant manufacturers? That's one more place that they have to guarantee is doing it sterilely and there's not contamination with particles around the implant during the formation process. So by the way, we do have a really good episode on implants and implant production.
You just wanted to talk about the drindles.
Is it drindle or mandel?
Mandel.
Is it mandel?
Mandel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they dip it in here. So then they dip it in. So the reality of it is, I think that it's a good question, but the current climate is probably not going to happen. Now, so right now we have 3 main implant manufacturers. And I like the idea of having more options. But I think that even those implant manufacturers, inside baseball are really struggling right now too, to maintain what they need to do for the FDA. The FDA took some of the textured implants off the market. They're trying hard to get those back on, getting new style of implants.
Well, that's not just in the United States. That's across the world.
Right.
Those were removed.
Getting new style implants from the current manufacturers up and running and into the market has been very difficult. A lot of them have had new style implants been delayed on their release. So it's just a very difficult time right now to kind of get implants onto the market. And so I don't think these other ones are going to be anytime soon coming in.
Yeah. And just because there are other options in other places doesn't mean they're superior or inferior. You may be really happy with your implants. That's awesome, But
they could be. Like, for example, they could be more hyper-cohesive. The shell could be new and different, right? But they just don't have the data, the real-world data for, to get that introduced in the United States.
Or there could be legitimate issues.
Either way.
Like the company in France who was filling their implants with not human safe things. I mean,
yeah.
There are reasons. So whatever the reason is, whether the company's not interested in being in the United States, the FDA, maybe they'll meet the safety
I think we have
standards.
to say, when you just said that, I think we have to say alleged.
No, they were. It was removed from the market because what they were putting inside the implant was toxic.
Allegedly.
Proven. Like literally proven. Like this
allegedly.
is. Yeah, this was.
Dude, I'm not falling on that legal sword.
What, we never use these implants. How would that be illegal? Anything?
I don't know. Didn't that like
the
libel
company has
or
gone
something?
away.
I feel like everyone says allegedly for
in
everything.
a foreign country.
Pretty much everywhere I go, I say allegedly for everything I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, for a variety of reasons, the companies may not be interested in being in the United States. The FDA may not find their safety profile meets their standards.
And
whatever.
as big as the United States is,
Yeah.
Overseas, which is the rest of the world, is bigger than the United
Far
States
bigger,
in terms
yeah.
of market. So they're probably financially perfectly happy to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and sizes. I mean, even South America, like you can get different size implants, different types.
Clearly,
of implants.
Amy and I have different ways to look at things. I kind of like the fact that Europe's more open. You could be more creative, but the FDA is rigorous for a reason. Patient safety, right? And it's better
especially
to be,
with implanted devices.
Yeah, it's better to be conservative with all the issues we've had with breast implants, BII, ALCL, a capsular contracture, contamination of the implant during the manufacturing, and the particles that are around the implant. Everything that goes along with breast augmentation. I think it's probably better to be conservative. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And the companies that are FDA approved in the United States have an amazing variety of implants to choose from, styles, shapes, texture. I mean, by texture, I mean the texture of the implant itself. I mean the softness of the implant, the responsiveness of the gel, like lots and lots of options. So if you are in the United States and there's an implant that you think is awesome in Europe, you might be able to find something that's similar in the States that is FDA approved.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jennifer. That was a great question.
Very good question.
Yeah. All right. So this name I'm going to butcher. I seriously was thinking this in my head. It's blab, lab, blah. Blah, blah, blah?
No, is that from, what was that show with Jason Bateman? Bob, blah? Bob? Oh, man. I'll think of it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But so either way.
Or it could just be blah, blah, blah. Like
blah,
they didn't want to
blah,
name their
blah.
name. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I was going too far. I was going blah, blah, blah. Like maybe it is just blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All right. Well, so blah, blah, blah. This is a great question. I read studies that indicate liposuction could increase visceral fat, and it would be good to get your take on this. Thanks for the fat episode. By the way, in Sweden, fat used as an adjective means awesome or badass. Like he had a fat car or that was a fat movie. So we definitely see the value of fat here. You see why I chose this question. Like fat, we talked about this in our episode all about fat, or let's talk about fat. Fat is an organ. Fat is an amazing organ. It's the reason we're alive.
Well, let's first talk about Sweden. Like, I think Sweden seems like a really awesome country. Have you ever been there?
I haven't.
No,
I haven't.
you have. You're Nordic.
I haven't been there.
Come on.
I haven't been to Sweden. I haven't been to Holland.
I think we should do an episode in Sweden.
Well, I'm down. Are you going to finance
for blah,
this?
blah, blah.
You going to finance this trip to Sweden?
Yeah, and fat, just so you know, in America, fat is PHAT. It's the same idea. That was fat. That was good.
It's fat.
Yeah. So the question really is, does removal of fat cells increase fat in other places?
Well, specifically visceral fat is
Yeah.
her question. So visceral fat, the fat that's around your organs, the type of fat that's actually really dangerous. It's kind of fat you don't want.
Yeah. So they found with medicine, obviously, Amy and I aren't specialists in heart disease, but we know a little bit. So if you have fat around your organs, visceral fat, okay, if you think of the quintessential older man with the pot belly, that's visceral fat, that fat that's around all the organs, that has a high propensity to be, or it's associated with heart disease and heart attacks and death. So the idea that you have visceral fat is alarming. Like, you need to do something about that. You need to address that. So the question really is, if you do liposuction electively because you have pockets of fat you don't like, and theoretically that increased the amount of visceral fat that you had, then that would increase your chance for heart disease and other associated diseases like metabolic syndrome and diabetes. So what do you think about that, Amy?
Well, interestingly enough, we actually had a patient, when you brought up the diabetes component, she had a strong family history of diabetes, and she wanted to have liposuction specifically on her abdomen, not for aesthetic purposes. Like, she was not at all, she wasn't overweight. She wasn't even concerned about how she looked really, but she wanted to try and decrease her risk of developing diabetes because she, made the connection between blood sugar and signaling hormones that are signaled by fat, and very much that being related to your blood sugar regulation. That was what she thought. So we did her liposuction. Now, was she go on to develop diabetes? Who knows? We haven't seen her in at least probably 8 years at this point.
So fat in itself is a risk factor for diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So the idea that you decrease the amount of fat you have would theoretically decrease the chance you get diabetes. That data has not shown to be true. Secondly, the idea that you remove fat and somehow your body, from a homeostasis standpoint, goes to whatever baseline it is with the number of fat cells, would increase the fat burden somewhere else, has really not shown to be true either. What does happen, though, is when people get liposuction and they gain weight, they're going to gain it in areas where you didn't do liposuction, and that could be visceral fat too. So the reality of that is, from my understanding, is that it wouldn't be unusual if someone gained weight that they would also gain visceral fat. So the important point there is, before you do liposuction, you should get to a weight that is maintainable. You should have, really focus on your health and fitness, diet, exercise, all that kind of stuff. You should be in a really good maintainable weight and something you could maintain long term, because that would maintain your results and also avoid this issue of maybe fat increasing in other areas that haven't been liposuctioned.
Yeah, see, and I look at the visceral fat specifically from a little bit different standpoint. As a nutritional therapy practitioner, someone can be underweight and have excess visceral fat.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Same thing with, you can actually get people who have fatty liver or other types of really bad metabolic disease.
Right. This is getting into alcoholism and alcohol consumption and that kind of stuff, and lifestyle, which can increase visceral fat. So,
well, it can increase visceral fat, but you can also get streaking, fat streaking through muscle. There are a lot of reasons why someone can have visceral fat that aren't related to their weight per se. Mm-hmm. So even if you're a healthy weight and you get liposuction, could your visceral fat increase after liposuction? Yeah, it could, but that's increasing not because you're gaining fat weight, it's because your lifestyle is unhealthy. The reason for the putting on a visceral fat is probably because you have blood sugar dysregulation. You may have some fatty liver disease. There's probably something else going on that's increasing your visceral fat that's unrelated to the rest of your weight. So, could that be? Yeah, unhealthy people get liposuction all the time. And if you are unhealthy starting out and you get liposuction and you don't change your ways, could your visceral fat increase? Absolutely. Now, is it because of your liposuction? I don't see the connection there.
I don't know of any study that's proven that either, but I guess it's theoretically possible, but I don't think that's the case from what we know so far.
Yeah, and just the way the body works, there was the study, and it was actually done here in Colorado about liposuction and fat regain. They looked at people who had liposuction of the abdomen, and then they had people do increased exercise, maintain their exercise, or no exercise, and kind of looked at these people. People who did no exercise following liposuction did have increases of fat in other areas of their body, even if their weight stayed the same, which then made people think oh my gosh, so it's true. You get fat in other places. Well, this study was so limited to the amount of people that were involved.
It was 14.
It was so limited. To make the jump from that, I don't see that there's enough data to make any type of correlation.
And there's other studies that don't show that. Right.
And all the people who either maintain their exercise, and this was walking, they had these people walk.
And again, it goes, just watch 1,000 of our episodes where we talk about studies that they're all done through questionnaires and stuff like that. That's notoriously terrible. They're not like monitoring.
They're not in a metabolic lab.
Yeah, they're not like monitoring everything they're eating. They have to depend on the people telling the truth. And what we know, even with our patients, that a lot of people don't tell the truth.
Well, there's bio-individuality. I mean, yeah, you're supposed to be, maybe if they're making these people come in and exercise in the clinic, which some of them do, you have to exercise on this treadmill for 30 minutes a day, the people who did versus the people who didn't. But maintaining your weight after liposuction, this is looked at and studied. If all of your other health markers are the same, I don't see how there could be some type of biological process that would cause an increase in visceral fat if nothing else changed.
Yeah.
If you were metabolically healthy.
Someone's watching this that knows the Jason Bateman movie on Netflix that was, I think, on HBO and then went over to Netflix, and there was a character named Bob Blah Blog.
A character? I was looking for the name of the show.
Was it like Bob Blah Blah?
It was Bob Blah Blog or something like that.
Bob Blah Blah.
And it was just the same cadence as this.
But it wasn't his character.
No, and they did the secondary. It was on HBO, and then I think they did the secondary seasons on Netflix.
Bob Blah
or maybe
Blah.
it was on HBO.
Well,
You'll find it. We can talk about it later.
Either way, love this
It's on
question.
there, just Jason Bateman. I just remember the show that their family business was a banana stand.
Oh, Arrested Development.
That's Arrested Development.
Of course.
Don't you remember Bob Blah Blog?
That was not an HBO show. That was on Fox.
Was it on Fox?
Or FX, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Fox show.
I never really watched it. It wasn't
There's
my
money
thing.
in the banana stand.
Is it really funny? Yeah.
It's so funny.
Anyways,
It's ringing a
the
bell.
two episodes I watched, there was a character named Bob Blah Blog. And then the narrator, who was actually Opie Taylor, it's
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, yeah. The way he said it, just so quickly, it was like, what name is he saying? And I actually Googled it. So.
Oh yeah, there were some interesting character names.
Well, it's good to know we have fans in Sweden. I'm assuming this guy is in Sweden.
I would think this was a
Blah, blah,
woman.
blah.
You think this is a man? You think blah blah blah
Yeah,
is
it's
a
a
man?
woman. It could be a woman too.
I think it's a woman.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right. So awesome question. From listening to the podcast that I super geek out on fat because I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah. Super great question. All right. This one's a little bit longer. So this question is from Nellie Girl. She actually left two questions, but they were the same. So I'll kind of summarize the other question. This was from our episode about breast implant exchange. You said not to bother with less than 100 cc difference. If I went from 300 to 375, would it make much difference? I'm considering a breast implant exchange and wondering if it's better to go with 400 cc's versus 375. My procedure was 2 weeks ago, and my surgeon said it was way too soon to have that conversation. I can already tell I made the mistake of going too small because, to be honest, I don't feel like I look that much different than I did before when I wore a padded bra, and my goal was to have more volume, so my breast balanced out my hips, the rest of my body. I still feel a bit smaller in my top half.
Yeah.
So I'm going to first, before you get into this,
Are we going to play Nellie?
We're not going to play Nellie.
Okay.
Your surgeon is correct that it's way too soon to be having that conversation. However, you're going to go down in size, as you have, I'm sure, since you wrote this question, because of inflammation. So if very swollen, you feel like you're too small, you're only going to get a little bit smaller. The one time that we have upsized a patient in implants, she came in. She was wearing her super padded bra from Victoria's Secret. She said, I'd like to look like this with no bra on. This is the size I'd like to be. Great. Put an implant that was around a 400 cc implant. She came in about 6 weeks later. She said, this is great. You gave me exactly what I wanted. However, I want more. So that was a one time that we have upsized a patient. Now she agreed that she got exactly what she asked for. She looked exactly like she did prior to surgery with her really, really padded bra on, after surgery with no bra on. But then she realized that if this was good, more would be better.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah, totally.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But I'm going to tell you the same thing I told her. The difference, especially for her, because she had an implant that was 400 cc's, you got to go up way more than 100. We wouldn't do a size change on someone who felt like they were too small when they were swollen. That was, I would say, even at that range, at a 300, I would say you've got to go up to at least a 450.
Right.
And that's, of course, without seeing you and knowing the breast measurements, but just knowing breasts in
because
general.
100 cc's in a small person is maybe a lot, where 150 in a bigger person maybe nothing.
Yeah.
So it depends on your anatomy and your presentation. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And you can look at it, though, percentage-wise, 300 to 375
barely a difference.
Is like a 20% increase, but that's distributed around the entirety of your breast. So it's going to be subtle and
not a worthwhile change.
Right. And so if you think about 20% difference, seems like a lot, but it's really not.
It's not.
So in your mind, that's when you got to start doing math. Okay, everyone get their calculators out.
Which people are terrible at.
300 cc's, 10% is 30. 20% is 60 cc's, 300 to 360, 375. So, that's where Amy, you think in your mind, okay, a 30% difference is only like a third bigger.
But it's not even.
But it's distributed out. Yeah. So that's why Amy, it's kind of arbitrary to say 100, but that it gives people something tangible to work with.
And that's for a small person.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, caveats. We're empowering here. Like the worst thing that we hate is like the 5'1" person comes in and says something that her 6'8" friend did. So just remember, there's always variations, and you're a real person, and you're an individual, and we love you for you. But in reality, you start to think in your mind like 30%, 35%. And in my mind, I'm like, in some cases, it should be 50% bigger, so they can have a noticeable difference if that's what they really want.
Yeah, and that's what's so hard with that.
50% bigger on 300 is 150. Which goes up to 450, which is what did Amy say?
450.
There you go.
So it's so hard. And if you really want to get a better idea of this, if you listen to our implant episode all about implant selection, it's an older episode. It actually has a picture of cantaloupes in a bra, I think, on that episode. So if you're scrolling through YouTube, find the cantaloupe bra picture, that's the one. So we talk a lot about implants. So what I did is I ran and grabbed 3 implants that are all right about 300 cc's.
You didn't grab it. It magically appeared.
Magically appeared. So I'm gonna slide the screen over.
We've never done this. No. This makes me very uncomfortable.
So this is what I do with patients.
You
when
have to
they
watch
come
the
in.
YouTube channel. I'm sitting here very uncomfortable. She moved everything.
So this is a 310.
I'm gonna put it right up here.
This is a 310. Okay. So these 2 implants are the exact same cc size. Try not to make Neil's expensive computer fall off. If it was the Chromebook, I wouldn't care. So these implants are exactly the same size. They are both 310 cc's, but as you can see, they are totally different implants.
So this one has a very wide base, the one that's not as projecting, and the one that is more projecting has a very narrow base. What is the difference on these bases? Probably a couple centimeters.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And then let's really confuse matters by putting this 350, right? So these are actually 310s, I should say. They were, to be precise, these are 310
That weirds
cc's.
me out because the 310 looks bigger than the 350,
Correct.
the one with the narrow base.
Right? But really, if you look at these 2 implants, these 2 implants, a 310 and a 350, have the exact same projection, but very different bases. If you hold them this way, you can kind of see that, like this one's taller. So these project the same. This one is the same amount of cc's as this one, but it has no projection at all.
You're blowing my mind, man. Stop it.
So let's just assume, Nelly,
that's
you're
like
all.
an MC Escher kind of looking at it.
It is. It's like the fork. Is that how many times are on the fork? Let's assume that you have this is a moderate projection implant. This is a 310. So this is probably similar to what you have. This implant is a 425. Okay, has basically the exact same diameter at the base, but look how much more it projects.
Yeah.
So it projects almost the same as this little guy, the 310, right? Same amount of projection. So if you have the 310, going up to a 425 isn't going to change the projection of your implant at all. All it's going to do is add width. Whereas if you have the 310 that's this one, it's not going to change the width at all.
It's going to change the projection.
It's only going to change the projection.
Yeah, so interesting.
So this is why you see that like 420, going up, I think you need to go up to at least a 450, which you can do keeping the exact same diameter, just increasing the projection.
And the diameter matters because the pocket's already been established by the surgeon. And so you think about it, you probably don't want to go wider. Probably that implant fits you. So your only choice is to have a more projecting implant, which will look a little more augmented if you're of normal weight or lower weight.
But it also might not, and it kind of seems like you would like a little bit more to balance out your hips. So you probably need the projection. Now, if you have, if like Dr. Martin said, if you have this implant that's very narrow, to go up to an implant that's very, very wide, you'd have to re-dissect the pocket a little. But just to go from these two, right? Going from
by the way, it's very hard to go from a wider implant to a narrower implant. And that's where you get into grafts and doing pocket work, which is definitely more expensive and more involved. Yeah, I've never seen you do that. That's actually really interesting.
That's what I do with every patient who comes in for breast augmentation with us. So the myth, we do say that on our episode about implant selection, is that everybody wishes they'd gone bigger. That's not true. Like, it's not, if you're sized correctly in the beginning. And that's why expectation is key. If someone is saying to me, and there have absolutely been times where I've pushed a patient to an implant that they're like, this is way too big. A month and a half after surgery, they're like, and I say, how do you feel about your implant size? It's perfect. I'm so glad you pushed me to that, because that comes with understanding the base, right? These 2 implants. If someone's like, oh, I don't want to be anything bigger than 300, but you see that this is going to basically look the same on two different people.
Yeah.
A 425 and a 310 is going to look exactly the same on a very petite person and a moderately sized person, even though they're different sized implants.
Yeah.
You get the same amount of projection.
Yeah.
It's just which fits.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important. Also, when we say we push people bigger, it's only 10% bigger. So it's the reverse of what we said before. When we give people ranges, it's usually pretty close to each other. So we're not saying, hey, you could do a 275 or a 450.
No, but there are patients who come in like, well, my friend has 300s and they look great on her. I'm like, right. And your friend this is your friend. Your friend is 310, right? To look like your friend, you have to do 425.
Every time I see implants samples, I think about a time that a patient came in and I handed it to her so she could feel it, and she handed it to her 2-year-old, and he started like playing with it like it was a doll.
Yeah,
and I was like, this is so inappropriate.
Well, this is honestly like a lot of the time, this is what my desk looks like.
Yeah.
It has implants all
We have
over
a weird job.
Yeah, I got a
very
weird job. Like my job is weird.
Yeah.
So, and this is to one more point, and then I'll be done with the implants. So 350, 425. This is the 75 cc difference that you think would make a difference. You see how it makes none.
Hopefully they can see that at
like,
home. Yeah.
Literally no difference. These implants project about, I think, 1/10 of a centimeter different.
Yeah.
The only difference between the two is a little bit of width.
That's crazy.
So to just size up in the same profile of implant, 75 cc's, you would literally, on most people, unless you were extremely petite, you would never notice the difference in 75 cc's. You just wouldn't.
Yeah.
So awesome question, Nelly girl. Good luck with your implant exchange.
Let's move this computer over. You're making me nervous here. Okay.
Throw my implants off to the side.
Yeah, I know. Is that pretty centered, Nils? Now I'm going to worry about this the whole.
No, I'm going to pull it closer.
That was a little closer.
Yeah, okay. I like it closer. I don't like it that close to the edge.
All right.
Don't look that close to the edge. So, Nelly, that's an awesome question.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, implant exchange is easy surgery.
I think it's important for
from.
us to support Nelly though, because it kind of makes me feel for her a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, but your surgery will be easy. I'm sure your surgeon, once your swelling goes down, like 2 weeks is way too soon. We would not do a re-implantation on a patient until at least 6 months, because you need to let that swelling fully go down.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to re-traumatize an area right away. You need to let the pocket heal. You're going to have a much better recovery from your second surgery, from your exchange, if you give it that time.
And she said, I feel, still a bit smaller on the top half. You need more projection. So basically that's
like
what
you
Amy's
saw.
saying.
Yeah.
So if you had more projection, that top half would be less small appearing.
Yep. But it's probably more than you think. So
we got your back.
Yep,
though,
we got your back.
We got your breast.
We got your back and your front.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the end of part 1
Yeah.
of listener questions. And there are so many that there's going to be next episode is going to be part 2. So if you asked a question and I told you it was going to be answered and you didn't hear it today, just know that in 2 weeks you will hear it or see it. So if you'd like to leave us a comment, you can do that. As I mentioned, you can text me or leave me a voicemail, even better, at 303-630-9038. Shout out to Faith for leaving me an awesome voicemail. You can also find us on social media at Jason Martin MD on YouTube and Instagram, and at Beauty and the Surgeon Podcast on Instagram. Dr. Martin, you got any follow-ups?
No, I'm just really amazed by the implant show there. That was nice.
Right? Yeah. That you guys all got to see. Like, this was a little peek on the inside. This is inside the exam room.
Amy flexing her muscles. She got a flexing muscle emoji.
After 15 years, the one skill I have gotten down real well.
Dude, you have crazy abilities to know exactly what number I'm going to pick.
Like 385.
Yeah, it's weird. That's why I think we would do well in Amazing Race, because we work so well together. We kind of like know how each other thinks.
Yep.
So like,
my extreme deficiencies.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't let me do the math task.
As much as like I love my wife with everything I got, we would be terrible on Amazing Race because she would just yell at me the whole time.
We'd crush it.
Where Amy and I we'd be able to work together.
We're both tall and like I could lift you. Like we have good strength to weight ratio. So
I think we could probably get it on the show. I mean, the plastic surgeon and his right hand man.
And his quirky assistant.
Yeah, his quirky assistant in their podcast.
Yeah. So you guys shout out to Amazing Race to get us on.
Yeah, get us on.
Yeah, pseudo celebrity Amazing Race.
Yeah, exactly. Pseudo celebrity. The B listers.
Yeah. Oh, we're like the F list.
That's all right.
We're way down.
I'm fine. I'll be F list. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me.
All right. Well,
it doesn't define me.
Thank you. Especially big thank you to those of you who left us a question today, and big shout out to those coming up in 2 weeks when you hear your question.
Shout out to Sweden.
Shout out to Sweden.
Yep.
Shout out to blah blah blah.
Oh, by the way, what was the answer to that?
Oh, yeah, it was Bob. It was Bob Loblaw.
It was Bob Loblaw. Yeah. And it was in Arrested Development.
Arrested Development. It was played by Scott Baio.
Scott Baio. I knew. Yeah. Those are like the 3 episodes I watched.
Infamous, and 5 episodes.
Yeah. Bob Loblaw. And that was just like blah, blah, blah.
Bob Loblaw.
So maybe our listener in Sweden watches Arrested Development.
If you do, it's a great show. There is money in the banana stand. I'll just say that. There is money in the banana stand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, and completely confidential health testing for everything from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19, right from the comfort of your own home. And remember, new customers and listeners of our podcast get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com/beauty and use the code BEAUTY20, beauty, BEATUY 20 at checkout. Get checked. It's the right thing to do.